welcome to another edition of Trader Talk TV coming from Cannes. Today we've got Jay Stevens with us. Jay?
Thank you. Great to be here.
Jay is the CRO of Adform. Excuse me, I can hear my voice is going because of Cannes. He's the CRO of Adform. He's obviously moved there for been here for 12 months.
Yep.
So Jay, you're a big sell side guy. Now
Yep.
you're buy side. Let's talk about some of the sort of key trends in that area. Like, let's talk about how marketers are seeing the stack and how they're seeing how data is integrated. So what kind of key trends are you seeing right now?
Yes, I think one of the biggest trends that we're seeing really is the growth of brands looking to hold the paper and the contract directly with the ad tech partners that they work with, and trying to consolidate that as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think there's really been a big movement over the course of, I would say, the last 18 to 24 months where we've seen this beginning really to take hold, largely for a number of reasons, but the biggest, I think, is just the realization that ad serving, while at its core and it's foundational to everything that takes place, it's not historically been a very sexy part of the ad tech ecosystem.
But it's now in vogue. Everyone wants an ad server.
But everyone's got to have an ad server, one, and that the data that comes off as the exhaust of that ad server is incredibly important and just as valuable as the CRM data that sits inside of the ECRM systems that brands have. So marrying these things together and ensuring that data, one, is siloed in that it's available only for that brand's usage, is important. And the agencies are obviously playing an incredibly important role in managing all the activity, the trafficking, the programmatic aspect of it, et cetera. But what we're seeing is that really the concept of being able to have the ad server, the DSP, and the DMP in one tightly integrated stack has been really important, and the brands want to have that relationship directly.
You touched on that briefly there, which is quite interesting. This whole idea that the contract is sort of managed by the actual marketer themselves. Right. So it's kind of like, are you seeing? I mean, this sort of goes into another part of the business, but are you seeing this hybrid model sort of bubble up, not in-housing, but actually the tech relationship exists between the marketer and the tech vendor, but the agency still is key, or the consultancy is still key in executing and managing campaigns?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the agency is the one who understands the provenance of where the media is coming from, the quality of the editorial that media is, that those brands are running on. Obviously, brand safety is an incredibly important issue. Somebody's got to deal with that, right? Yeah. And in addition to just the execution, the planning, the comm strategy, et cetera, and that's the strategy, and then the execution is not something that the brand manager for Sprite wants to have to deal with.
Absolutely. And the people to execute those campaigns are finite. Sure. They're limited.
That's right. Yeah. And but they still want to be able to control the paper and ensure that that the data is safe and secure because it's theirs. They're spending the money against it, and it needs to be siloed against and available only to their brand.
So let's talk about, the big sort of looming crisis for ad tech in Europe right now is potentially the GDPR stuff.
Exactly. And
everybody's talking about it and how they're going to get into it. And obviously every legal firm in Europe is making coin trying to consult people on how it's best to do that.
It's Y2K all over again.
I get the sense that's the case at all. But from a European, your DNA is effectively rooted in the European market. Yeah. Just tell me how you, as a company, built that layer of privacy security into your core products, and how you're actually more GDPR compliant than some of your competitive set in the US.
Yeah, I mean, this is another reason why owning the contract with the brand it's another real big reason why we're seeing the kind of adoption of brands wanting the relationship with the tech suppliers themselves, is that compliance issue.
Right.
The legal sides of the general counsels in most of the corporate environment are now beginning to wake up to realize this is a 4% of revenue fine if we are not compliant, and on global revenue, not on the European revenue. And so it's pretty draconian in terms.
Net or gross revenue.
I don't know. I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. But the reality of it is that this is a big issue, and it has to be, it's not just a procurement issue anymore. It's becoming a legal issue, and compliance is an important piece of this equation. And that's one of the interesting parts about Adform is the fact that the heritage is European, and the product has been built from the ground up with privacy by design. Yeah. So. Our ability to, and as you may know, some of our biggest clients are telcos and banks.
Yeah, which have strict regulations around privacy.
Incredibly strict. In fact, actually, one of our biggest clients is UBS. And working for a Swiss bank is the compliance issues with that are pretty complex.
And that puts you in a pretty stronger position, obviously, with the bigger clients in Europe. Like, I mean, a lot of the big brands in Europe are legacy brands.
Yes.
And I mean, does that give you a competitive edge here, more so than some of the US players?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fact is that we don't have to go back to the root system of the product to understand and figure out are we compliant, and are we going to be compliant, and do we have to bring in armies of counsel in order to figure this out. So the good news is that we're well positioned for when these laws go into effect in May of next year. And it's 11 months away, so we're not too far off, and it's going to be a challenge for American companies and American tech vendors who, if you're lucky, you might see 30, maybe 40% of your revenue coming from the European theater. So we are in a very strong position, and the reality of it is that American brands that do business in Europe
still have to comply with the laws.
They still have to be GDPR compliant too.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Mr. Pritchard from P&G. Yes. He obviously made a big sort of State of the Union address about the state of the industry, transparency in particular.
Yep.
Let's talk about what Adform sees here. Like, I mean, obviously there's the whole issue about the supply chain, and obviously the ad tech tax, if you will.
Definitely.
So what's your perspective on that? Like, I mean, we had a conversation with the Pomatic guys this morning, and they were talking about how they are trying to push the whole transparency and be open. So how do you work with your clients around that area?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we provide log level data to our agency partners as well as to brands should they want it. We're incredibly transparent about our fee structure. That's obviously an important part of the reason why I came here. And the company's done a fantastic job of really building the business on a net margin, which is compressed in many ways vis-a-vis the rest of the competitive set. So we're firm believers that we will see further consolidation in the market, and we see further compression of margin.
Do you think there's going to be consolidation on both sides of the coin?
Absolutely, definitely.
Because of what reason? I mean, obviously Cannes is still, pretty much dominated by a lot of ad tech companies.
Right.
I mean, and I would say data technology companies like the Oracles and the IBMs of the world.
Right.
And it seems to. But do you think that ad tech is now going to have to evolve? That we're going to probably be down to a handful of really, really big infrastructure plays, as I like to call it, ad servers and pipes. And then on top of that, we have all the innovation and all the sort of point plays.
Yeah, well, I mean, point plays come out largely in a new market. I mean, if you look back in the automotive market, 75 years ago, there were umpteen number of brands that existed, and now it's essentially been consolidated into 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
And that it's part of the maturation process of any industry in terms of that consolidation. I think one of the challenges is that when you're using multiple point solutions together, it's difficult to get your cookies to match up, your audiences to match up. So to be able to execute on all that data becomes more challenging. There's a whole range of things which happen and benefits that you get when you move into a full stack environment, and you're able to seamlessly gather all the data because everything's on a single domain. So there's a lot of benefits to that. So kind of going back to your point about what Mr. Pritchard was talking about, obviously supply the supply chain, making sure that supply chain is clean. I think we're already starting to see some nice movements. Dr. Richter with the IAB and the ads.text.
Dr. Neil Richter. Actually.
Dr. Neil Richter.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting solution.
It is very, very clean and very.
It's clean and elegant.
Yeah, I like
and
it.
It's I think it's something I think we'll see some nice adoption on a global basis.
Do you think that'll make a big difference to premium publishers? I mean, the URL spiffing is chronic.
Totally.
And also criminal to take money away from premium publishers.
I agree. It's it's a big challenge in the industry that has got to get resolved. And I think that the big SSPs the good ones have all cleaned up their inventory over the course of the last 3 years anyway. So that's one thing. The other aspect is tech tax. I mean, the reality of it is that I guess the ANA report, which came out and said 42% of the revenue. Don't quote me on that number, but I think it was that number. It was right around. It was around 40.
Yeah. 40.
Is going to the all the various point solutions and providers in the market. That's a lot of money to be lost, and that's before it even hits the supply chain, the supply partners and the exchanges. Well, I think there's another 20% in there.
I heard a story last night from a individual saying that one of the vendors, one of the big brand, has moved its business from one agency to actually consultancy because they were losing 53 cents in the dollar to basically the whole rate, and actually in fact they're only spending 7 cents. As we well know, if you buy cheap, you're going to get crap.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you start looking at other reasons for consolidation in the market. That's an incredible one. Is the need to put more money against working media. It does not make sense that 60 to 70 cents on every dollar, pound, euro invested in media is taken out before it actually hits the publisher.
So you think that maybe there is no need then for another company to build an ad server because we already have ad servers, and effectively what we see now is consolidation around the core competencies.
That's right.
Like DMP, DSP, but ad tech effectively will evolve in other areas like the whole VR or the new areas of sort of the greenfield sites.
Totally. I mean, that's where the innovation happens, and then those guys get pulled in and consolidated into larger plays. It's a classic classic model.
Are we likely to see less boats here next year? Right? If we see a consolidation, will it be the Luma chart where we might have Adform and we might have a few other ad servers and then a couple of supply side platforms globally? We have 5 boats maybe.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll just be bigger.
So in terms of your, I always like to talk about it from global picture, but in terms of how you are pushing out from your core market, which is essentially being Europe, into the likes of APAC and North America, are you having to sort of apply the strategy to the local market? Is there different ways of doing things? How do you see, particularly some of that stuff in APAC, how do you see that market developing?
Well, I mean, I think we have 2 global holding group relationships, and have just signed one last week, which we'll announce next week when we can finally push the press release out,
Congratulations.
or the week following. So we're the good news is that we've really invested a lot around the global holding group relationships, and we see obviously those as incredibly important channel partners for the business. Just the same way we also see the likes of Accenture and others that are
consultancy business seems to be a rich vein for you guys in terms of accessing new clients. I mean, how do you see that role changing? How do you see them changing the ad tech conversation? Well, we've obviously seen some high-profile people like Amir, who was a trainee, he's now gone to
Accenture, running programmatic,
and that's a big move for them. That's a great hire as well. But do you see more of that happening? Do you see more of people, traditional ad tech people, or even agency people, moving across the consultancies and informing their process and then having a knock-on effect with the likes of yourselves?
I think. I think it's something that it kind of depends, to be fair. I mean, one of the things about Adform, and we talked a lot about this in terms of the full stack, is that because it's an enterprise suite of applications and it's not a single point solution, it's the ad server, the DMP, and the DSP all integrated into one. that's something that the big systems integrators, the big consultancies get. It's in their DNA in terms of here's how we work, and we know how to integrate, and we know how to implement software. It's ERP.
Buying Oracle or buying Adobe, and it's sort of being able to sell that into the client.
That's exactly right. And so there's much more of kind of an understanding of, okay, I get it. It's all in one, and we've seen some just at your event last year or last month in Madrid. Obviously we had Melia Hotel Groups on with Accenture talking about what we're doing together and how the selection process ran. Same with in Italy, we work with Banco Intesa Sao Paulo. That selection process was driven by Accenture. So we're obviously seeing a lot of work, not only among the big consultancies like Accenture and IBM and others, but we're also seeing a number of boutique consultancies which have come up, people like Stack.io, et cetera, that are also helping brands understanding this more closely.
So are those guys working on an RFP process for the brands? The brands are coming and say, we need this, this, and this, and then that consultant say, well, look, why do you need a DMP? What's your rationale?
Right.
And these are the vendors that would probably help best.
That's right. And and another area, another group that we've seen come pretty fast and furious into this space is Ubiquity. Is Ubiquity.
Oh, Ubiquity, yeah.
So doing quite a bit of helping brands run their tenders for a partner to work with, and working in collaboration with the agency. But obviously Ubiquity comes from a background which is largely around media auditing.
I know. Is it a funny one for them to be kind of involved?
It is interesting.
All right. And in terms of the product suite and rollout, what's the sort of big focus for you guys in the next 6 to 12 months? What's the area you're looking at most at?
Yeah, so we're looking at a lot of, I don't want to call them necessarily emerging channels, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for us on adding. Obviously, digital out of home
I've heard a lot of.
There's a lot around this.
I spoke to Katie Jones from Clear Channel.
Right.
And it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's still early days. It seems like still kind of.
It's still very early days.
Yeah.
But as more and more of their screens, whether it's Clear Channel or JCDecaux or Shure, as the number of their digital screens grows,
it just makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And the reality of it is, most of these guys are now making the lion's share of their revenue from what is essentially 10% of their overall real estate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of opportunity for programmatic to get into that landscape. But it's interestingly enough, it's even happening with things like print. So we're seeing big brands. We announced, I guess, about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, the relationship with Media's Book to power the French market, to enable all of the big publishers in that market to be able to see increased efficiencies and
more
workflow.
Automation sort of thing.
Exactly.
What about the audio piece? Is that a big area for you guys? We obviously, we've seen Spotify making big moves in that area.
Spotify making moves in it. I think there's going to be a lot more activity in that with obviously Pandora inventory is available as well, and it wouldn't surprise me if podcast data. I'm sure podcasts are going to be if there's not a podcast SSP yet, maybe we should
there you go.
One.
That's a great idea for the viewers. It's actually quite a great idea because I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I can't understand why some of these apps don't have some kind of tool that lets them monetize them.
Right.
Like that. But I'm just curious though, all these new emerging areas, where's the money coming from? Where's it flowing from? Is it going to flow? Because this is the thing that's interesting to me. At the agency level, obviously a lot of that money is going to flow from the agency, but is that spend going to be centralized into programmatic? Are we going to get, or is it going to come from these new areas? I get the sense that still has to be figured out at the agency level before the money can really, really flow.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think one of the things, especially about outdoor, is that there are specialist outdoor agencies which control those budgets, and so do they get those budgets, or does the trading desk get those budgets? But ultimately, at the end of the day, everything will be traded through a terminal, through a UI, and it's crazy to think that that's not going to happen. Because it's way more efficient, it's cleaner and more elegant for the user. It allows the costs of buying media to come way down. And given the number of channels that exists out there and the fragmentation of touch points that the consumer has with media today, it continues to fragment further. And
obviously, the best UI out there, best bit of technology to buy would be Adform.
Absolutely.
All right, Jay, thanks for that overview.
Thank you.
And great to get insight into where you guys are going, and obviously the new channels is quite interesting as well. So
yeah.
So next year we'll hopefully see more Adform growth, and Jay will obviously be talking about new clients in Asia and Europe and the US.
Indeed.
We'll see you next time on Trader Talk TV.